If you're looking for some straight-up marketing advice that's super chilled and also a bit of a laugh, then grab yourself a drink and get ready for Marketing and Margaritas, a podcast that makes marketing entertaining. Brought to you by Rebel Nation, direct from regional Queensland.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Margaritas. Today I'm joined by Jaime Newborn, and she's going to be sharing with us her tips from being an in-house marketer. So Jaime, I actually was marketing in-house as one stage of my career, but obviously being an agency for quite a number of years now, I've really sort of gained a whole different respect for people who are on the inside having to do it all themselves. I've always thought of you as literally probably the most chilled marketing person I've ever met. Most of us in marketing are just a little bit extra wound, and you're incredibly relaxed. I don't know if it's a facade or whether it's real. I'm sure it's real. But I think, you know, we've worked alongside each other for a really long time, and it's always been that supplier client. I've never actually worked on the same, like we're on the same team, but like on the same team, you know what I mean? I've never been in the same place as you. And I don't know, you just always seem to have your shit together. You always seem to be across things. And I just think, again, this was a topic I really wanted to do, and I thought of you, and I was like, you'd be really great to have on to do this. So welcome along.
Thanks, Jade. Can I say I'm very flattered? I read your points yesterday and showed them to my husband, and he was like, wow, is this really you?
Oh, yes, I'm an amazing guide.
Well, so look, I think that I am actually quite relaxed and calm at work. That doesn't always translate to home life, unfortunately. However, it's nice to know that it comes across to the other professionals that I work with. You know, I do strive to be very calm, particularly when I'm in charge of a team, regardless of the size of the team.
That's what I strive to do, but I don't actually hit that. I strive to be chill, like I want to be a good leader and not, but things go wrong, I'll be like, oh my God, okay, we can do this, this, and this. Whereas you're like, yeah, no, I get that. Okay, maybe we could try this. And I'm like, how does she do that? Where does this natural calm thing come from?
Yeah, that is actually a really good question. I think, you know, I learned pretty early, and particularly, and like I said, I'm better at understanding this in a work context, and I really do need to work on taking it into my home environment.
You got kids, man. Like, who can be calm around kids?
It's true, and they're
people
very
on
triggering.
lithium. That's it.
Yeah. Much more triggering than my work colleagues. But I learned really fast that things almost never go exactly to plan, and so there's no point in getting too wound up about it. You know, ideally, you've sort of thought of a few contingencies ahead, or, you know, you start to get to a point in your career where you can kind of see where things are going earlier than you could have at the start of your career.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
you can see warning signs.
Yeah, you can.
Pivot.
And pivoting is a wonderful thing. I will say that is actually one of my top tips is, you know, and I've worked with enough people that I really admired, and one of the things I always looked up to were the people that were very agile. You know, even when there seemed to be a lot of pressure on them, they would pivot, they would change direction, and they weren't frightened to do that, and usually with really good outcome.
I think that's such a good point too, man, because it's sort of like, I don't know about you, but I think coming up in marketing and business, there was this whole like, not pride and ego, but there's a thing about, if you make a decision, sticking to it and sticking to your guns and all this kind of stuff, and being seen as a point of pride, as opposed to like, well, if something's not working, then being flexible enough to go, actually, maybe we should try this. Doesn't mean you're backtracking, doesn't mean you're going back on what you, and P.S., you're allowed to change your mind when new information comes across.
Absolutely. And you should.
Getting a feedback loop, like if you think something's going to work and then it's not working and you ignore it and steam on, that's fucking ridiculous anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, listening to feedback, paying attention, and then moving with it, I think is more admirable than just stubbornly sticking to something.
Yeah, and really going in with the expectation that things will change, because they always do. New variables come in.
You can be sure of is change.
Yeah, that's right. And I think have a plan, but I've also realised that the most important part of having a plan is actually the process of creating a plan, because it makes you and your team think about things.
So much.
It doesn't mean that plan is then necessarily cemented in for life.
Not set in
but it
stone.
means that you've thought about different channels, different kind of aspects of what you're about to do, you, and you will more easily recognize when new information comes up that might mean something needs to change, or
because you actually thought it out and planned it, and you're like, oh, we made this plan based on this assumption, but now we know this, so that's the part that's going to have to change, as opposed to just like, oh, we'll just chuck some stuff together and who knows why or what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's right. And you can identify new opportunities a lot more easily if you've done the planning process. So I admire plans for the process, not for the actual final outcome necessarily.
And I think that's it. It's having that living plan as well of like, sort of like, I think having a plan also makes you feel a bit more confident in what you're doing, because it gives you a guideline. But then when you do need to change it, it's like, well, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Yes, we've just jumped straight into the tips. I actually do want to give people a little bit of background about you. So just a brief rundown of career, or just a few key highlights. Like tell us, how long have you been in marketing?
Gosh.
You know, what kind of industries? Like, were you always in house marketing? Like, give us the highlights of Jaime Newborn.
It's been quite a varied, I'm not going to say illustrious. To be honest, I thought, am I old enough already that I'm being asked for my carear highlights? And yes, I am.
How many
I'm not
years?
going to share my age here.
Oh, I was going to say, how many years have you been in marketing?
Well, so it'd be coming up to like 20 years within industry in some capacity. So I actually started out as a journalist, as a little tiny baby cadet journalist. I did a double degree. So I've got a Bachelor of Business and a Bachelor of Journalism. So from QT in Brisbane.
Yeah.
Loved uni. I started, doing work experience, before I'd finished the degree, and met a lot of different people.
I can't imagine you as a journo, like, because you're not pushy. Not that journos are pushy, but you do have to be a little bit forceful at times.
Look, I didn't have a nose for blood.
I was like, you didn't have that killer instinct.
Kind of journo, but I did love a good feature. Like, I loved sitting down with random people, and I started to realize everybody has a story, right? Like, there was just fascinating individuals, and they were just kind of everyday people on the street. And so I did quite quickly get put onto features, which I loved, and like a kind of interview based, just telling people's life stories. And I still love that. I have to say, I love a good interview, like as we are doing now.
Yeah, I was saying, me too.
And I mean, it's a privilege, right? You get to ask people all these details about your life, and sometimes I think I should formalize it with my own family, just to like kind of, record from my parents things that my kids can listen to, because it doesn't always come up in everyday conversation. Like, you kind of have a reason to for your line of questioning. So I still love that about journalism. I think that served me really well. The other thing journalism did is it makes you realize how much you can do in a day when you've got a deadline that is at the end of that day every day. And it makes you more relaxed.
Because you are so chill, I can't imagine you rushing around to reach deadline.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I internalized it. I would have looked shocked as I walked around the newsroom, I think. But some of my best friends still are from, and I didn't stay in journalism long because I realised certain elements were not for me. But it gave me some really good grounding for all the jobs I've had following, and I'm still really good friends with everyone that I did journalism with. And I think it's because you're kind of in the trenches
together, buddies in arm, or whatever that term is. And
it makes you, what it really does is it makes you not shy to approach people too. You know, you have to talk to, you have to get interviews from, say, maybe 6 people in one day. They have to agree to go on the record, and that takes a bit of persuasive talking.
When you're media, 100%. Even just getting people for this sometimes, like 99% of the time when I'm like, oh, hey, when you have the podcast, most people are like, oh, okay, I'll do it. But like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. But I've had a couple people turn me down for the sole reason of they're like, I'm too nervous. I don't think I could do it. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, and that's just this, you know what I mean? Whereas something, is going to get reported in news media, it can see people would be a bit anxious about it.
Yeah. And there's a couple of classic journo scenarios, if what you're trying to do is talk to the family of someone whose family, whose kids or husband have just been in a car crash, or so
some
these
kind of
classic
tragedy.
Scenarios did come up, and you don't, and also I didn't love that kind of journalism, like I said, but
that's the part I didn't like either. So not having to be like, I'm sorry, can I just interrupt your grief for a moment to interview? How painful is it? Like, it's just, that's not a fun thing to do.
But it did make me realise you can, all you can do is ask. You can ask and this is true in the context of business too, as respectfully and as relatably as possible, and don't ask with the, they have every right to say no. And so I guess for me, it was in how I was asking and just making sure that respect was there. And
yeah, I think anything you approach with respect and humility and stuff is going to do well. Yeah. So where did you go? Did you go from journalism into marketing?
Yeah, I went from journalism into kind of a blend of PR and marketing. Right. And honestly, I loved it. From the outset, my rule was sort of to always pick companies and organisations that I was aligned with, because I realised what I loved about journalism and what they say about going to the dark side, right, is that you're selling your soul for commercial. And I was like, I don't actually really have a problem with that, as long as as long as the organisation that I've chosen, I couldn't go in day after day if I wasn't sort of believing in the content that I'm immersing in. And so I was.
You can use marketing for good. It's like all superpowers. You can use it for good or evil.
Absolutely, you can. So, but I thought, I was reasonably careful. I mean, for that first job, you're sort of like, I'll take anything.
Yeah. You want to hire me? Okay.
Yeah. But
so you club baby seals and then you sell it right. Okay, cool.
Well, no, because as it turns out, I've kind of merged into the environmental NRM space. But I started out with a group that was more or less an agricultural, like a national agricultural group. And I was actually born on a farm, Jade. I don't know if you know.
I
so we had
lots
of connections there.
Yeah, nice.
They had a lot of like a sort of section that was very much sustainable agriculture. That was quite fascinating. They had an organic, strong organic component. So it was a very interesting start to immerse in two worlds. So they were producing resources and marketing resources as well. They were like an industry association for farmers, so for primary producers. You can imagine that style is one style specific to a grower. But then on the other hand, they had like a trust fund set up by Miranda Kerr for organic cosmetics.
Yeah, right.
So a very consumer oriented
as well. Interesting.
Too.
Yeah, okay.
So it was a really
that was
good
such a
grounding.
blend.
Yeah. And so you could see these different ways that you needed to communicate to remain authentic, and you're sort of, it's all coming back to that core product, but your channels are so different.
And the audiences you're talking to.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing too, like in marketing, we tend to like a lot of variety and mixture and no 2 days being the same and having that interest. And that's what I think for some people who are in in-house marketing is that they can sort of get stuck in something where they do feel they're just doing the same thing day in, day out.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that?
I have never felt that. I cannot tell you how much I have felt the opposite, to the point that it's an issue. Because in-house marketing, it's small teams usually, sometimes if a team at all.
I was about to say, or a solo team. Hi, I'm in the in-house marketing team.
And I've kind of ended up, and probably because of where my own interests lie, like since then I've worked in a bunch of different sectors, and this is one thing that I love about the work that I do is that you can, and I think you should jump ship into different sectors because you'll learn something new every time you do that.
And you can bring what you learned here across to here, and then you'll,
So I've ended up sort of working with a strong focus on sort of agriculture and what I would call natural resources, but I've also worked for like one of Australia's top 5 law firms as a media advisor in Brisbane, and in the education space as well. So I guess for me, a common theme there though, is that they are all quite complex areas. So you do need that skill of distilling content down for a targeted audience.
Which is tricky, especially thinking in like in legal and education and stuff. And you're right, environment, natural resource, etc. There is so much, and filtering that down into a message that just anybody could actually pick up and absorb. Challenging, very challenging.
Yeah. And some are more naturally fun, like at least in education, you do have students and kids. And
if you like that kind of thing, sure.
Yeah, they're all right. So no, I really, I really enjoyed everywhere I've worked. And then currently I'm an executive officer, so complete sort of sidestep.
Did not actually know that.
Healthy
Excellent
Rivers
podcast research. Well, I knew you were there. I didn't look at your title. I just assumed you were marketing PR.
I have a comms person now. That's Rebecca.
Wow.
So
Dude,
it's a
look at you go.
complete kind of change. But this is probably something I would say to anyone that is on this journey. It's the skills that you learn as a marketer, as a public relations expert, as a communicator, I guess, are very transferable up into sort of management or executive level. So in the end, this role really needed someone that could manage stakeholder relationships, build relationships, connect dots. I mean, these are all skills that we use every day. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, so let's get back into your tips. So first one was, yes, you do believe in having a plan, but more about the process as opposed to rigidly holding fast to a plan. What other things have you learned about keeping your shit together when it comes to being an in-house marketer? Especially when it is all on you. Like for those people, you know, when you are the sole team and stuff, like I just think that's... Like when I did in-house marketing, it was like I had other people with me. It wasn't just me by myself. And I watched some of these ones where they are by themselves and it just, they seem... Lonely seems like the wrong word because it's work, but
overwhelmed.
They just kind of, it's like they just want a friend, a marketing friend. Like they just want to talk to you.
I love having a team.
Because, and the thing is, like, I think marketing can be a little bit isolating sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, same thing being an engineer. Like if you're at a company where you're the only engineer,
but
probably
those guys
no
don't
one
want to talk to people.
Yeah, true. But like probably no one understands you.
Yeah.
Marketing, I find, is the same. People think that what we do is voodoo.
Yeah.
They don't get it. And so talking to another marketing person is like, oh, thank goodness, you'll understand me.
Absolutely. And because a lot of marketing is perceived as fun or fluffy, even though we know how vital it is to getting results, everyone just assumes it's the process of getting there is easy. No, like the funner and more simple a success seems, the more that
more thought and planning has gone into that. Yeah. That is such a good point.
So everybody remember that. Everyone remember that. Marketing is not easy. But I guess in terms of tips, I would say be realistic. I have always struggled with this because I'm quite an optimistic person. I like to say yes to things. Like it's not that I don't know the rules about setting boundaries, but I hear a new idea and I think that's great. Like,
I struggle with that so much myself, man. I'm like, I just thought about 20 cool things I could do on the weekend. I'm going to start 10 of them today, even though I haven't finished the other 100 that I was already working on.
Yeah, exactly. So try to be realistic.
And because marketing, there's always new opportunities. There's always new things to try. Like saying no to stuff is hard.
Yeah, exactly. And there is, and sometimes you do need to grab those opportunities. And as you work more, you kind of realize what is a good opportunity to grab, or like it's something that can happen quite easily versus something that will be very labor intensive
and maybe not worth the return once you actually get down that rabbit hole sort of thing.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
So I would say be realistic. Do the planning process. Just because I don't hold rigidly onto a plan, it's very easy to not do the planning process, especially when you're in-house and busy and there's so much demand to just do, like execute your tasks all the time. This one is like every in-house marketer will say this, it is very challenging to find time to think strategically. So, I think you kind of
you're like, I've got to actually be doing all the things. I need to be doing the socials, updating the website, writing that media release and prepping so-and-so for that speech tomorrow night. When do I actually sit down and sit back and go, are we doing the right things?
Yeah.
Are we in the right places?
Yeah. So you do need to carve some space for that process in whatever way suits you, whether it's like literally putting 2 days in your calendar where you pretend you're away at a training course or whatever you need to do.
That's how I do myself. I literally will block out the time in my calendar, and I say this to the team too when they've got stuff to do, like because they have RDOs, for example. I'm like, well, you make stuff work when you have an RDO. If you've got a big project or rebel stuff that you want to get done, block out that day as though you're not going to be here.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll
It's
be
important.
surprised by how much you get done beforehand, and then that day can just be left to focus on whatever you need to be, like planning or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because you could often, we get to the end of days that were filled with meetings, etc., and you not further with tasks anyway. So like, I just, you know, don't feel guilty about blocking that time out for yourself.
And I think that bit of time that you do spend for that is going to pay off for you the rest of the time, because sometimes you get stuck on that hamster wheel of doing things.
Yeah.
And every now and then you get that little bit of a, oh shit, am I doing the right things?
Yeah.
You know, where if you've done planning, it's sort of like, nope, this was to plan. We were going to trial this for 6 months, see how it goes, evaluate then, and so on and so forth.
Likewise, though, I would say, you know, reserve some time just for, it's marketing, right? Having lots of conversations with people is part of work. So sometimes, you know, sometimes you internalize, sometimes you externalize, and you will be surprised at what comes from just conversations with people when you've made a bit of space. So I like to keep that in mind too.
Okay,
And,
can you give me an example of what you mean? That's interesting. I haven't sort of...
I mean, it's not like I strategically am like, I'm going to talk to 5 people today and do nothing else. You could do that. But I guess you make space for conversations. And again, you get better at evaluating sort of, I guess, which conversations are more important.
Do you mean like with people within your organisation, or
both.
just...
It could be either.
Because even just like your target audiences and stuff sort of thing. Like, I know for us, like with our clients, I find that, like, obviously it's not just me. I've got a team of people, and when a staff member will meet the client and get to know them, and it, you know, like they might have been dealing with each other on email for ages, but when they actually meet each other face to face and have that conversation and build that bond and rapport, so it's not just with me, but they've built it between the two of them as well. They kind of feed off each other more then, and it's great. Like it is, and it takes time and space to do that, but the payoff is awesome.
It's high, like, and you can't be doing that every day. But similarly to the planning, it's important to reserve a good amount of dedicated space for those conversations to happen. And then the other thing, I guess, is like, who said this? I think it's Marie Kondo. You know, if it doesn't spark joy, like don't throw it out necessarily. We all have, like Bluey. There's boring things that are important too.
I'm sorry, that reference is lost on me. I've never watched Bluey.
Any mom that's watched the swimming episode.
Is it Hammer Barn? Thing that they that's the only thing I know. That's the only reference point I have.
Yeah, no.
Well, I do have friends who are disappointed when their kids grew out of it.
You definitely need to get on.
And they were like, I still want to watch it. Yeah.
If a new release drops, me and Lewis are like, well, we'll just watch that after the kids go to bed, and we'll watch it again tomorrow with them. They're great. So many lessons for life in Bluey, really.
All right, I might actually have to crack this can of worms open and actually watch an episode.
You should put a call out for everyone to recommend their top 3.
What's your favorite Bluey episode?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is life lessons in Bluey for sure.
Yeah, righto.
But some of the best campaigns I've seen, and it makes sense, right? Like we are human, are the ones that were actually enjoyable, or the person initiating them had a genuine passion for them. Because then you will go that extra mile, and it won't feel like the extra mile, you know. You have fun doing what you're doing. Not everything can be like that.
Yeah, not everything's a labour of love, man.
Yeah, that's right. But some of the bigger ideas that I've seen well executed were in people's, you know, where people had a natural sense of joy around what they were approaching.
It is. Well, it's like anything. When someone's enjoying what they do, you can tell.
Yeah.
They just bring like a whole different energy and stuff to it, and more energy to it really as well. And I think also then getting other people on board too, because I'm assuming
it's authentic enthusiasm.
Well, and even when you're in house marketing, like it's not like everything just happens normally, like for you to direct it. Like you've got to get your management team on board, and quite often you've got to like work in with other team members from other sectors and stuff, and sort of like I know working in-house marketing previously, like I was at a place where there was a lot of different divisions, and you'd have to work in with all different teams sort of things. So you kind of like you're not pitching to a client, but you're sort of like pitching to your own team members and stuff about why they should do this for you.
Yeah.
Like it's, getting people on board with an idea. You've got to believe in it first.
Yeah, absolutely. And likewise, other people will come up with ideas that, you're dumbfounded by. And you think, why haven't I thought of that earlier? And that's an example of those conversations again. And because you're absolutely right, in-house marketing, you're talking to such a huge range of people, like other teams, senior management, boards,
all that fun stuff.
Big collaborative effort.
Oh man, I get tired just thinking of it though.
It is, I will say, do not confuse something that you have joy for with like not being hard, not having tasks
to put lots
that no
of
one
hours
wants to
and
do.
stuff in. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't know where this thing comes about marketing being glamorous. Like I must have missed that part of the industry.
And so much champagne. Where's all the champagne?
Yeah.
This is not alcoholic, Jade.
No, it is. What do you mean? That's heavy on the tequila today, Josh.
I know, and the whole Mad Men, I did love that series, but I was like, wow, that golden day has died.
Yeah. Probably better than it should have, though.
Yeah.
I love that series too, but it is
there was some gender inequalities.
Just a touch, you know.
But even, who were the two ladies with the champagne? Oh gosh, this is going to go nowhere because I can't remember. You know, the Brits? Oh, and they had the fashion house. God, what was that?
No.
Anyway, that
great story, Jamie. Yeah, exactly. You'll like read me this afternoon. It was blah blah. Thanks, babe. We'll add it to the blog. It'll be in the podcast notes.
Very occasionally.
That's the best thing about podcasts. Anything you don't remember right here and now,
I'm gonna look it up.
Just goes in the show notes. Yes, this is the campaign that Jamie was referencing. Here's the link to see more.
Yeah, very occasionally I found myself in moments and I'm like, from the outside this would appear glamorous, but they've been few and far between. I may be working in the wrong sectors.
Yeah, I definitely have been, because I can't really think of much. Most of, like 95% of my time I feel I'm just sitting in front of a computer. That's not glamorous.
No, it's not.
It's literally me trying to like get into my screen. Like that's one of my biggest problems my chiropractors I have is I can't just sit here. I'm like in the screen, but we'll have our issues.
You do cross paths with interesting people though.
Yeah, I think you get to learn a lot too. Like I know, like obviously in agency life, we sort of, come across so many different businesses and industries. It's awesome.
And at different levels, you're right.
It's just, things that I would never have thought of, or like, especially I go back to engineering because we've got quite a few engineering companies, and engineering to me is like still kind of like trying to wrap my head around exactly what it is that they do.
Yeah.
But it's the people who are passionate about it. Like I just love listening to them, man. Like they're so into what they do. And it's like a calling for a lot of them, like it's hard not to get excited by their excitement.
Yes. Although my husband is an engineering surveyor.
Oh, really? Oh, I did not know that.
That I always get excited. But he does. He is very immersed in his work, yes.
But that's that passion. It's beautiful. And that's what marketing, you get to kind of share that passion with people.
You do, and tell the story of different, and this is why I like moving in those different sectors. And you find those passionate people, and it's always made me realise, how deeper dive you can take into any sector. There's so many nuances to all of them.
I think that's one of the things that I do miss from in-house marketing is that you kind of have, not that you guys have loads of time because you're still very time poor, but you guys get to do such a deep dive as much as you choose. Yeah. Whereas like my deep dive with a client is only as far as they can let me go, sort of thing. Whereas with you can get to the guts of anything you want. Presuming you have the time to do so, which over time you do.
Over time, no, absolutely. Yeah. And you're right, it's one of the things I think that I enjoy the most, and the reason that I did go so fast into
getting that depth sort of thing.
You do. Yeah. You become a content expert in the field that
whatever
you're in, just naturally, because you are working with the content and the experts all the time. No, it's great. I have lots of agricultural knowledge I could share with you, Jade.
Of course, you're just going to go buy a farm in next week and go.
I don't know if I can apply any of that. I know the theory.
Love it.
I don't know how to operate most of the machines, so.
Look, I'd have a red hot go. I would definitely, I like machinery. I really like the idea of driving machinery, but I don't think I should be allowed to. Like, if you've ever seen me park a car, I don't think I should be allowed to go on anything else.
I think I probably know just enough to be dangerous now that if you really force me into that corner.
Okay, cool. So, wrap up tip for today. One thing you want to leave our audience with, from one in-house marketing to one previous in-house marketer, what's something you'd like to impart?
So really, as we said, you are pulled in so many directions as an in-house marketer, and that makes every day very diverse and creative and challenging. But one of my biggest learnings, and it took some time, is that just because you can do it all and you have a broad range of skills, graphic design, video, writing, it does not mean you should do it all, and you will not have time to do it all. So it's kind of looking strategically and thinking, what can I outsource? It might be something that you can do, but you do not have all the time in the world. And you can outsource, as you would know, to wonderful agencies like Rebel or freelancers. You can outsource just little components. You can literally outsource what you don't have time
and
for.
Stuff too, sort of thing. Like, you'd be surprised how you can kind of patch together a bit of help from your team.
And also things like your social media training. You can areas that you do want to absorb in-house but you don't have the knowledge, you can do some training, pull certain aspects in-house, but always be thinking what can be easily outsourced.
I think that's such a, yes, for in-house marketing, 100% agree, but I think it's such a lesson in professional life though too, Jamie. Like, for business, for me, one thing that I'm trying to get better at is that when I go through, and I call it clear decks, so I go through and I clear out all of my inboxes and all my little scrappy notes and shit and whatever, and I pull together one big to-do list, and the first thing I try to do when I go through it is see what I can delete from it. So what stuff that doesn't really need to be done or has already been, just so I know exactly what I need to do. And then my second thing is I try to go through it and go, do I have to be the person that does this?
Yeah.
And there'll be things like, oh no, I can ask our studio coordinator to do that. Our socials person can do this. Oh, actually the client is probably better at setting this part up, sort of thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or I'm going to send these 5 things over to Josh and he'll be real happy with it. I try and look at my list and see, does it have to be me that does it? Yeah. Can I actually, because then I get filtered down to just a list of what my must-dos are. Yeah. And I find when I've got that clarity, I work a lot, I'm much more productive. Yeah, whereas if I got lots of things all the time, I flit around and do fucking nothing, honestly. Yeah.
Well, we all can get into that mindset, It's such an important process, Jade. And also, it makes the difference between, if you've done it kind of early enough, you can ask other people in a way that is actually respectful to their time to assist you, rather than kind of having the same realization 2 seconds before something is due and still throwing it to that person.
But, and lumping on them. Yeah. And I have done that previously where I've been like more so when I was a sole trader, and I would, because I was just starting out, having my own business, and I would be like, holy shit, I've got all these things due by the end of the week. It's Wednesday. I can't physically do that. Yeah. And, I had mates and stuff who I contracted things to. Yeah. But how unfair of me to be like, hey, did you have nothing to do for the next 2 days? Great. Can you please write this fucking 6-page website?
And sometimes it's unavoidable, and it's
when you've got good
I'm
friends,
sure you
it's
have
lovely, but you don't want to extend the friendship too far. Even when you're paying people, it's still not cool if you can help. But the thing is, sometimes things can't be helped.
Sometimes they absolutely can't.
But if it can be helped, try and help it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, that probably, as you get more senior, that probably becomes more important. If you're running your own business, it's hugely important. In all areas, not just marketing, So that's my top tip. Don't do everything yourself. Share the load.
I did not pay her or tell her to say that. That was her tip solely and wholly.
Oh, well,
thank you for ending on one. Hire an agency. Ding.
Make sure it's Rebel. No, really, she did not. We did not talk about this. But I really did come unstuck, because at uni I had done, through the business component, I had graphic design skills to a level, right? Writing skills to a very high level, video editing to a level. I could do it all, but like video in particular, I thought, God, I'm not an
So
expert.
labour
It's so
intensive.
slow. You know, I did do a
fucking hate
couple of
video.
them,
Yeah.
and Josh, I admire you greatly.
He loves
you
it.
need an expert, but you need an expert,
He
and you need
is
someone
so
whose
into
whole world
it.
is
I
about
don't get it. Yeah, it's crazy.
Do not. I would. You know, video is one that I really learned, like in terms of the time involved in you pulling it off, and everyone. It's getting. You know, now everyone's like, you can just quickly cut together a reel, and yes, you can.
But if it's going to be good quality, even reels that are like super short, there's a lot of time that goes into creating something that's good quality.
Yeah, people's whole jobs and Instagrams are based around this now. You know, it's not. Yeah, it's easy to cut together something personally, sure, because you're just going to show it to my mum and dad about my kids, right? It's not got any real targeted message. Here are your beautiful grandchildren.
You already know they're going to love the subject matter, so it's a win-win.
But when you actually want to have a bit of strategy around it, it's even a short, simple video is not going to be as short and simple as you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. That was a really good conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I'm
glad you know what my job is now too.
I know, I'm so bad. Well, I've never looked at your email sig. I know it's got the Healthy River to Reef partnerships, and I just assumed.
No way, full team of 4.
Wow, flash. No, thank you so much for joining us, Jamie. Really
thanks
appreciate
for having
it.
me. It's been great.
Cool. And I hope you enjoyed that as well. And I'll be seeing you in the next one. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Marketing and Margaritas. Find more free marketing tips, tricks and laughs at rebelnation.com.au.